Welcome everyone to the City of South Salt Lake Redevelopment Agency meeting. It is Wednesday, August 27th, and it is currently 6:15 p.m. My name is Leanne Huff, and I'll be conducting the meeting tonight. And I believe Paul and Corey are excused. We will start with roll call with Ray.
Ray DeWolf.
Clarissa Williams. Charlotte Bynum.
Leanne Huff.
Nick Mitchell.
And then we'll move on to no action comments, report of the executive director.
I don't have anything this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
And now we'll move on to approval of minutes. If I could get a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the June 11th Redevelopment Agency meeting minutes.
I'll second.
I got it. Motion by Clarissa, a second by Nick. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to new business. The item number 1, the Bellhaven project overview.
Hi, Jonathan Weidenhammer, Community and Economic Development Director. We're going to give you a presentation from the development team on what we called Forever Times Square or blocks. Jason Oberman is the owner of the development company and of the property. And with him tonight are members of his design team, Peter Berger from MBE. Peter, you've seen his work in some of the more recent projects you've considered. So I think you should recognize some tenets of it. I think these guys have about a 30-minute overview, and we've allowed 10 to 15 minutes of questions from you. I'm guessing you can interrupt them anytime and ask hard questions, and they'd enjoy that. The reason we're bringing this to you tonight is just to give a preview. You haven't had a chance to get a good preview of this in a public setting where our residents and other stakeholders can take a look at it with you, but also dual purpose to knowing that we're going to be back similar to the other project with a series of things you'll need to consider. Street vacations, planning commission will have to look at the plat, likely development agreements and participation agreements, among other things. And you should start to see those happen rapid fire over the next 2 months. So know that that's coming, and this is the basis for those discussions. I'll be here if you have any questions for any of this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and excited to share with you some of the progress of what we've been working on. So currently we're under construction on 73 units at our project, which is kind of formally referred to it as Times Square. And what we started with was a little over 20 acres, and it was going to be one building, 73 units, which is what we have under construction. And it's going to be done in 3 months, and that was the plan, one apartment building. But working with the city over the past several years, we've been inspired to do something a lot bigger. It's 20 acres, so we saw a vision that was originally set out by the city, inspired by your vision for open space, density, and connection. We looked around and saw the strengths of this plan and this overall area. And it's the best trail system in the city for running and biking, and the most connected transit hub in the entire region. And we all asked, as we were looking at this, and it's 20 acres, what if? That's what we started with. What if we took a challenge and we stretched on this trail and took it from one of the worst sections and one of the most challenged sections of the trail, and really celebrated it and turned it in one of the greatest sections of the Parleys Trail, and to make it into an incredible greenway and one of the best sections. What if we then built a village around it? That's where this all began. And today we're excited to show you what that vision has become. So I want to thank the mayor, planning, parks, mobility team. We've been working with all of them, as well as fire, civil. It's been a real collaboration, building on ultimately what was a very bold vision of a master plan many years ago that you, mayor, set forth. One focus on open space, walkability, and connection. We're excited to move this forward. And with that, I want to turn it over to MVE, to Peter, who can lay out what this vision really is.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you guys for the time, for being here. So welcome to Bellhaven in South Salt Lake. So this initial rendering is a view from Third West and looking into the project. and what you would experience as the front door to the project. So we're going to start to go through some of the key principles and planning principles and ideas around what this project really wants to be, and everything that makes up the DNA and the narrative of the project, and kind of walk you through our process here and go through some of the kit parts. Right away, what I hope you guys are realizing, this is not a project where it's a one size fits all. We're not just pumping podiums to pump podiums or certain density pump certain density. There's a level of scale and with the massing and the architecture and a nostalgic nature of what the design is really trying to pull from to really create a timeless narrative. We don't want this thing to be the new cool thing when it's delivered. We want it to be fantastic over the next couple decades. So you are seeing in this view a series of taller buildings in the 7-story range, a series of 5-story buildings on grade kind of in the distance here, as well as some 3-story product on grade, as well as as Jason mentioned, there's 73 units that are currently under construction right now. They're on the foreground and the front right. And most importantly, as you'll see, is a strong narrative that's going to tie throughout this entire presentation, but really meaningful open space, really meaningful green space. We think it's something when we take a bigger pulse and kind of check on what's in the South Salt Lake downtown area, there is no open space. There's no green space. There's no meaningful space that's going to create gathering and really bring people together. And we think this is a great opportunity, again, not just for South Salt Lake, to be much more regional pull as well. We wanted to get this out there just so I don't want to necessarily read this per se, but there's a lot of things that have been on our mind as we're building this story. And we want to always be able to come back to what our vision is. So there's key words that are sprinkled throughout this vision statement. Connectivity, wellness. We want this to really be a village of buildings, meaningful public open spaces, vibrant for the future of South Salt Lake. And again, really gathering spaces. We want this to be a destination. We don't just want this to be for residents only. We want people coming in from outside of the project as well. So there's a lot of, again, key words here, but these keywords are something that we continue to pull back through at every level of the project, whether that be architecture, whether that be landscape design, whether that be public spaces or commercial spaces, even down to branding and signage and things like that. It's all got to pull back to the same narrative. So this vision statement is something that's very much on our minds as we go. Just to pull back, and I know this is, everyone's very familiar with the area, but we did want to point out some key things. As Jason kind of mentioned, we have this incredible opportunity with Parley's Trail. It's one of the most incredible urban trails, I think, in the entire valley. It connects you all the way from the Wasatch and the Bonneville Shoreline Trail all the way down the Jordan River Trail. And let's not, shy away from it. I think right now, some of the weakest parts of that trail exist through this core. And I think we, as this opportunity to really design and form 20 acres of space, I think we have this responsibility to really form that trail and make it purposeful and make it, as we keep talking about and preaching, let's take the worst part of the trail and make it the best part of the trail. So that's definitely a big part of this narrative. In terms of access, though, it's hard to beat the access. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but South Salt Lake is a tremendous opportunity. If you want to get to the U, if you want to get down from it to the VO, you're centrally located. You have great vehicular traffic. You have obviously great trail systems. There's so many great things, even from public transit with the tracks lines. There's so many great things that are happening for the site and for the area that go, again, just even beyond the site. But we want to just highlight some of those key pieces in this diagram. As we jump in a little closer, and Jonathan wanted to remind you, this is actually one of the approved diagrams from the HDRZ approval process. But we wanted to highlight this so everyone kind of realizes where our site is in this overall diagram. And for me, when I always look at this diagram like this, I always kind of dissect it into these 10 mega blocks per se, and we're 1/10 of that. So again, this tremendous amount of responsibility. Just for some context, again, our site is 20 acres. Market Center's 5 acres. A project like the Post District is 10 acres. So in terms of level of scale, there's incredible opportunity for impact here. And one of the things that I love the most about this diagram, because it's something that we lean into in a big way, is not just making a purposeful improvement to Parley's Trail, but also the importance of what Haven is in this diagram. It's something that it kind of came to this point in the current site location, and it kind of just hits a dead end, right? It doesn't even continue into our property. So that was one of the big first observations. We'll get into that in a second, of how we really realign the block, realign the internal streets to make a more purposeful connection to the overall urban grid. And like I mentioned before, that taking this broken part of Parley's Trail and how do we just continually improve? And obviously we can't control every last block here, but we can absolutely be a catalyst. We can absolutely set precedent and set an example of, hey, this is what the cadence should be. This is what the expectation should be. Other parcels come online in the future. Let's use this for inspiration. So that was a huge observation that we took from this image. And then what we did here is, just from our firm standpoint, we are overseeing the market center. We are the architect on the market center development as well with Glacier. We dropped our plan into this diagram as well as the Bellhaven plan, just for some context. But something that I mentioned before, the missing component to, I think, the downtown right now is that green space. And as you saw in that first rendering, and we'll continue to reiterate through the presentation, I think this green space that I'm kind of highlighting, we're calling it the plaza in all of our diagrams. We think it's critical. We think it's critical not only from a placemaking standpoint of what the project is, but also from a public programming standpoint, getting movies in the park, concerts in the park, even, pushing ideas like farmers markets or yoga classes or things like that. There's a space now that actually can handle that. And right now we don't really have that. So that's a big part of this. So zooming in a bit tighter to the property, I mentioned this a second ago, and I do want to reiterate it because I think it is very important. But right now, the current road system on site where Mercer and Bugatti and Bearcat and West Bearcat kind of sit, it's not developer friendly. Yeah, we can easily kind of stick to these road systems and probably save our client a lot of money and a lot of kind of heartaches. But at the end of the day, this is not about just creating a great development now, but prepping the site for even future development and future success. So that was really one of the first things we realized that we need to really push on the site. One was the realignment of the intersection on 3rd West. Let's get that over to Haven, let Haven actually extend into this piece of the downtown. And then secondly, by putting the roads on a diet and essentially going down to what you're seeing, this yellowish, orangish line, which we're calling new road circulation, it allows for these more developable blocks. It allows for blocks that now can take on meaningful development, no matter what the construction type is. It's not limiting to saying, hey, we have this thin layer of land, it can only be a podium, that's the only development that can happen. It actually allows for these blocks to happen where you can do meaningful product that's parked on grade, that's 3-story walk-ups, that there's all these different options now, which we think is fantastic from just the economics of what development is, but just opportunity here. So those are some big key takeaways. And then in addition to that, the goal of this project is not to all happen at once. There's definitely an appetite to get to 900 units pretty darn quickly, but there are future buildings, that exist on site, in particular the red buildings, really in particular the ones that sit on the south and the west that have current leases. They're being utilized. Those buildings are occupied. We want to make sure that those tenants are not forced out. We want those leases to terminate appropriately and on per agreement, and then let those blocks still be absorbed accordingly. So a lot of thought's been given to what this road alignment is. It allows for some of those to sit and work well. It also allows for the future development of these blocks to kind of happen in a and from there, that's really that was really kind of the bones that started to build into our current master plan, and that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. In terms of an initial, again, appetite, I kind of mentioned a second ago, we're just over 900 units that are being allocated in these really white buildings, I'll call it, that are intermixed with some of these purple amenity spaces, as well as the red is the more commercial retail spaces. But again, just over 900 units in those conditions. And something that I mentioned before, but I do want to reiterate, I think it's so important to realize we are in an urban environment, but it's not necessarily saying it needs to all be structured parking. We can create a meaningful urban environment by doing parked on grade product in certain locations, some structured parking in other locations, some podiums in other locations. It really kind of sets a precedent that, hey, we're allowing for all these different multitudes of development that still could contribute to the overall place. So things to highlight here, again, everything that this diagram is centered around is the realignment and really the continuation. We're calling it the Greenway Trail because I think the technical Parley's Trail, just from a public easement and everything, is still going to exist in place. But no one at the end of the day, I think, is really going to instinctively use it. I think they're essentially just going to come straight through the property and then connect through the back end as well, where we have this what we're calling out the perimeter path and the waterway to the west that's underneath. The central plaza area that again is that publicly programmed location sits right off of all of that main activity. We thought that was important that again, as you come through the greenway, it's not that you have to come off to an adjacent path to get to that space. It's all centered around that energy and bringing people central to the project. One of the biggest lessons learned that our firm has gone through in doing developments like the Post House, we're doing Silo Park as well. It's not just creating great buildings and great commercial space, but it's getting those bodies and those residences on the street and getting those spaces activated. So key things in this project, which I think are doing that, is one, we're going to have a series of units that actually live off the street. They're going to have front door stoops. They're going to have front door access. That is how they're going to really live and operate in and out of their buildings. And in addition to that, we centralize the amenity package. So if you're going to come and use the gym, which is easily the most used amenity package in multifamily rental living, you're getting out of your building. You're walking through the community. You're getting to this central main large purple building here. And that's where the gym is located. There's gonna be a wellness component in there with different spa components. There's gonna be a co-work environment, main leasing and things like that. So it's really gonna get activation to the street and really get bodies on the street from a resident standpoint year round, which is only gonna improve eyes on the street and safety and all those different planning principles. As you can see, there is a small amount of retail that we have on the project. We think it's the appropriate amount. There's 1,000 square foot space that's really designated towards a cafe space, a smaller coffee kind of use. And we'll show some renderings of that in a second. We think there's a really great opportunity there. And then we've sized a very purposeful 5,000 square foot space that we know a larger restaurant space would want to come and bring in. And if we really land the right restaurant tenant and the right cafe and coffee tenant, we feel like that's going to be enough to really activate this space. And we'll show you in a second as well. We've designed a series of, apologize about that, a series of spaces that are parked adjacent to the plaza where food trucks and different more mobile modes of commercial uses can come and either play up the space or play down the space, depending on what the activity is and what's being held in the actual plaza itself. So a lot of opportunity, a lot of flexibility. And we think it's ultimately lending itself to a really nice plan. And as we mentioned, these future blocks that are more in gray highlight a series of these of just opportunities. Right now, we've kind of designated a series of buildings to plus or minus put levels of density to that. Depending on what you want to build, we thought you could anywhere between the 300 plus range to 800 plus range. But for us, again, going back to that original goal, creating developable size blocks that allow different multiple uses there and success in those blocks. We wanted to highlight circulation because we think it is key. Obviously, we have the green line is the bigger kind of walking paths and trail systems that are connecting you to bigger loops around the project and the perimeter, or getting you obviously along Parley's Trail itself. The secondary use here are the blue lines, which are more pedestrian specific, kind of getting you through the property. Again, lots of permeability. This is not about being some sort of gated condition where you can't just get through the property. It's all about movement of people. And then obviously the vehicular component as well. The single entrance right now that's on 3rd West in its existing condition, it's kind of a traffic engineer's nightmare. The depth of that, the stacking of that, everything that has to do with that, especially when we're talking about 900 units, there's going to be some real purposeful kind of intersections and depths, and that's what this is ultimately creating. And still want to make sure of some bigger city initiatives as well, really identifying the 3rd West bikeway that's intended to come down 3rd West. We did include a series of these before we got into the renderings, but these are really just white box massing to kind of show you get your sense around of the overall place and the overall mass that's going to be on the site. What I personally love about this is too often are we approached by developers and just say, max it out, just go push every last unit in there. We don't really care. We just need the returns. We need the pro forma. And what you get is a bulk of 5-story buildings or 7-story buildings or whatever it is maxed out. What I love about this from a placemaking standpoint is we have 2-story buildings, 3-story buildings, 5-story buildings, 6-story podiums, 7-story podiums. We have a little bit of everything. There's going to be a lot of fantastic scale and texture to this development, which I think is going to make it live very well. And then one of the things that we have spent a lot of time on is when we're doing a project with multitude of buildings, the spacing in between the buildings is so important. We have a rule within our firm that every floor that you go up, you should have 10 feet of separation, and that's kind of an appropriate metric to use to think about how buildings should separate in appropriate ways. So one of the ones that was definitely something we studied really tightly was, we're calling it the Greenway Trail, but as you come through and this pathway connects through the property that connects to Parley's Trail, this spacing in between these buildings we think is so important. So that's 50 feet of spacing. We have a 5-story building on one edge. We feel like that's going to be appropriate for what that is. It's not going to feel like a tunnel or anything like that. So a lot of these little nuances are going into this massing diagram. But again, we think it is important to make sure we're looking at it and studying it in this fashion. Just some other highlights just to make sure everyone's crystal clear, but we have a series of, obviously, these green spaces. This is the main plaza that I've mentioned several times about how that's being programmed. We have a series of other more intimate outdoor spaces. We have one here that we'll show a perspective in a second, a more trellis and kind of informal green space along the entry piece here. And then we do have a centralized pool, again, bringing all the amenities centralized, again, that same concept of getting bodies on the street and activity on the site. That pool is resin only, just to be very specific to that. But the 2-story club building here, club spaces, fitness spaces, leasing, co-work. I think we're even talking about a half-court indoor basketball condition there that can be played year-round. So a lot of fantastic things happening in that zone. And then getting into the renderings. And I mean, I hope at the end of the day, you're not really listening to me here. You're just focusing on the image, because that's what really matters. Something this kind of goes back when I even first met Jonathan and we had just wrapped up the post district. Something we care incredibly deeply at our firm is when we produce renderings, especially at a public forum like this, we're going to deliver on those renderings. We especially, again, it started with the post district, because when the renderings came out, people kind of were like, are you going to do this? I don't understand. This is going to be, pretty out there from an architecture standpoint, but delivering that for our firm is a big deal to us. So when you look at these renderings, this is what's in the drawings. This is not a pretty picture to sell a pretty picture. This is what we've already started to, with our client, move along and really start to progress, and really get these buildings as dialed in as possible. So just keep that in mind as we're going through these spaces. As you enter, though, again, this whole notion of creating architecture that's timeless, that's nostalgic, we think brick is an incredible material to do so. A series of different brick specs as well, not just sticking to reds or things like that. We think we can introduce some more grays, and obviously the building that's under construction right now has a more white brick. But there's just a level of detail to every single one of these buildings. There's a different level of kind of spec and how we finish the brick, we think is important, as it really sets the tone of how this 7-story building on the left feels versus the 7-story building in the distance, versus even the attention to detail that we've kind of given to the brownstones, the 3-story walk-up units there, where we want those to feel like individual units. We don't want it to feel like copy, rinse, repeat. So each one of those takes on a slightly different brick spec, a slightly different character. There's some pitched roofs, there's some flat roofs, some take on some more modern windows, some are more traditionally inspired, but trying to just really, again, make it feel like an elevated one-of-one unit. So that's just a unique offering in the market, or in this project, excuse me. Couple things to highlight. This more informal green space. There's a concept from landscape architect to introduce a bosque of trees with just some real order and really, again, lean into the landscape as the first impression as you come into the site. So that's what's happening in this foreground. I think there's gonna be some great spaces underneath in terms of gathering and just seating opportunities, and those boutique type of outdoor room moments that I talked about earlier. This would definitely be one of those moments. We have a more finished structure that would anchor this informal green space here and also look over what we're calling the Greenway, but it's really the continuation of Parley's Trail. And then as you move to the left, you're starting to get a glimpse of the main plaza space. And what I think is ultimately going to be a fantastic building. This is actually a prefab Neri structure, but it would make up the cafe space. Again, very, very European-like, excuse me. But should really be a fantastic kind of anchor to that space, because it's easy to picture these spaces when there is a movie in the park or there is a band playing. We want these spaces to feel great when there's 2 people there, right? Or you're just coming to get your coffee in the morning. So I think that's important to keep in mind. So kind of flipping around now, we're looking more south over the central plaza space. That again can be the more programmable space. You're getting a really clean shot of kind of the clubhouse building, that two-story read in the distance, and again that programmable space here. Something that we have paid a lot of attention to, and to try and make this feel as integrated as possible. The streets that surround the main plaza. So this street in the front here, which we're calling Haven Way, and then Lupin Lane, that's in this condition here, that's off to the right. All of those streets tabletop up to slow traffic down, create a zero curb condition, and we're introducing pavers. So we really want the central plaza space to feel like it's an extension over the roads across to the other program, into the Greenway or Parley's Trail condition, across even into the larger restaurant space, which is off to the right. So it really becomes this zero-scape kind of condition. And it's what we ultimately always talk about. We want it to feel more comfortable to walk on than drive on. So that's something that I think is important. Also highlighted in this view with these cars here. Again, at the end of the day, I really hope there's not a lot of cars that actually are parked there. It's more, that's where we're thinking food trucks are pulling up, integrating into the space and really flexing up the commercial program as needed, depending on the event. Now we're getting a bit more into the space, and we're looking on, this is what we're calling Lupin Way, but you're looking directly south. So we're kind of elevated to the left of this, but to me, this is a great shot as you're getting a sense of what those pavers are. This is where it's actually traffic, the tabletop is trafficking, or excuse me, angling down in the immediate foreground. But you're getting a sense of what that restaurant space would feel like off to the right, what the prefabricated Neri structure would be off to the left here, and how this would really feel in an activated condition. Again, great scenes, I think, of either people getting dinner off to the right, or grabbing a coffee off to the left, and really activating these spaces and really creating not only, again, fantastic for the neighborhood, but also for the immediate development, but also a destination. And being that we're on Parley's Trail, we can pull from so many different directions of people coming to on a bike ride and landing in this location. So I talked about this briefly with staff before, but I'm so excited to present this pool because we've done a lot of developments in and around an urban setting, and a lot of time the pool is something that is, yes, we need it. Let's check the box list. It's going to go on top of the wrap building, or it's going to go, it's going to tuck in the podium, or whatever it is. But to do a pool like this on grade, that's going to get mature landscape to grow in a meaningful way. You're not building up structures and having all these little nuance of putting something like this on a structure. I would argue this is going to be one of the most fantastic resort style pools in a rental community, really in the valley. It should be really impressive at the end of the day. Obviously, we're anchoring this in a big way by the central club space. But I think right now we're anticipating 3 different spas in this location, a really clean pool that's going to look just fantastic year round. We've already talked about different components about heating the deck and just being really purposeful about, again, making sure this is a usable space year round. But again, a lot of opportunity. I think just a great moment for the project. And then finally, we want to show a view that really highlights the trail itself. So again, through our diagrams, we're always going to call this the Greenway and not technically Parley's Trail, because Parley's is going to go off to the side. But still, this will be the main connector for Parley's Trail as you get from east to west through the property. And this is really starting to scratch the surface. I think there's ultimately going to be layered in signage and lighting and different components that start to really identify what the trail is and that you're in this really unique space. But you're getting a sense of some of the 3-story units that are going to appear on the right of the screen. You're getting a glimpse back into the restaurant space off to the left. So again, a tremendous opportunity here. And we really think this can be a fantastic, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, really catalyst and precedent for what Parley's Trail can be through the downtown. We included an additional couple of model views, not fully rendered, but really wanted to just kind of paint a full picture of the space. So as we move towards the furthest west end of the property, this is really where you're getting more under the freeway, and there's a water basin retention area that exists in this location. And we think that engaging that in a more meaningful way and not having this hard fence line edge, there's going to be a lot of work that we need to do with UDOT here. But we do think it's a meaningful way to create a really unique experience. There's just not a lot of locations like this. One of the things that I love about this when you go out on site, because the freeway is so high, it's very uniquely quiet. It's very deceiving. You would think there would be more noise. So this could be a really fascinating kind of found moment in the project, where people are just like, God, where is that? How do I get there? And where do I be a part of that and participate with that? So not envisioning people like kayaking or fishing here, but at the same time, still a really interesting kind of moment that you can look out over, and really integrate in the project in a unique way. And then these last series of views were, I'm very excited about this upper left-hand image. This is actually a fountain that we're going to do right as you drive into the property and on access with the drive before you start to kind of curve and turn in. But again, that whole dialogue and narrative that we talked about earlier with these boutique outdoor living rooms and these boutique outdoor rooms that you are able to, I can participate in the space and feel like I'm in my own zone, and it's not just this vast open green space. So we really think that's going to be a unique opportunity. You're getting a little bit of that on the right here as well. This will be where the grove of trees are kind of on the entry. Now you're more into the space. Again, are there moments of cornhole and different seating opportunities? It really almost becomes an extension of this first building. Really, really unique opportunities to kind of be outside and enjoy, again, meaningful open space, meaningful green space. And then finally, the bottom couple views are just some additional shots of the pool zone and how these different buildings are going to participate and overlook that space, and really have great eyes on the so that is it. Clearly, we're very excited about this. Again, a lot of responsibility that we feel given the amount of acreage that we have here. But I think we feel like we're putting the right components of the project and the right forces of the overall downtown kind of in priority here, and really pushing on them. So we're here for any questions. And I do want to echo what Jason said. It's been a privilege to kind of work with staff several times, presenting to the mayor even on this, and it's really been an iterative process, and we've been able to kind of push ideas back across the table, and it's been a really a fantastic effort so far. So thank you.
Thank you. That was a great presentation, and love to open it up to questions if anyone has questions. Yeah, Clarissa.
So the project all looks great. I know the location, for everything that's there, seems like it's a lot. Keeping in mind that for me, I'm big on safety. The roads look small enough. I'm worried about fire trucks having to go through there should something happen. Those are things. What does that look like? And I've seen like a lot of development going through. We're putting up a lot of places. We're bringing in a lot of homes. We're bringing in a lot more people. I'm wondering if there's a possibility at some point where we get like a developer who includes possibility of building a small substation for our fire department, because we have 3 fire departments, but we're located so much centrally downtown. We don't have, in my opinion, I don't think we will have enough firefighters to handle all those people. One of my biggest things that has always been is the safety, is because we need to get our fire trucks down those streets. We need to get them to come down to have enough room for their trucks to turn, and to even have extra additional employees there. That's the end vision. We just can't bring in a lot of people and not expect to consider safety. That has always been my biggest thing, because something like this looks great. But if I travel down some other parts of the city, parts of it like West Jordan, it gets really small. And I wonder often how fire trucks come through. So that's my biggest thing, and has always been and will always be the biggest thing when we get development. What about our fire department? How do we get more people in there? Because we're bringing in more bodies. We just can't keep running on the same force we have.
Would you like me to respond, or should we just take I mean, generally,
Yeah,
I can
go
tell
ahead,
you
respond.
we started with Chief Addison was very much from a fire response standpoint and focusing on making sure we had appropriate response times and areas for trucks to get in and out of there. I would say we developed answers and responses to that before the site really ever got anywhere. And so we feel very confident about the level of response time and how we can serve it with existing infrastructure. Terry, Chief Addison, excuse me, has been very clear on ISO ratings and insurance as we move forward. And he's obviously been working with our facilities team to make sure that he has what he needs. I think we can continue as we work through the HTRZ to provide the infrastructure and the backbone and the facilities that we would need to have the appropriate response times. I'm not sure it's the right question for this developer at the table here, but we certainly hear your feedback, and Chief, if I'm saying anything out of line, just let me know.
And and I think this is something I've always asked of every developer, every time, and that's, I don't want that our safety to be in hindsight, the last thing we think about, and then think, okay, well, we built too much. We do this.
I think it's one of the first things we think about, but I do hear you, and I think one thing we can take away as a staff is to be prepared next time we have a broader update on the HTRZ or the downtown to show you how we intend to address the facilities we need, whether they be public open spaces or parks or fire, police stations, those kind of things. That's a take home from me that I'll have.
Thank you, Jonathan, for coming up and talking about that. Charlotte, and then
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were asking that, Clarissa, as we all know, a portion of our property tax is designated for public safety. And so as we get more properties on our tax roll too, that's money that we would use to expand our public safety services. And so I think that might naturally kind of work its way out. I think it's a beautiful project. I think it's the perfect spot. I have no other notes. Good job.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. First of all, Jason, Peter, thank you for being here and presenting it. It looks like a really exciting project and probably the coolest pool in South Salt Lake. So congratulations once you get that built. Just a few technical questions. With the Greenway Trail, is that public access, and would that be managed by South Salt Lake, or would that be managed by the property management company in the development?
We anticipated the question against Jonathan with the city. Jason and I and the city are working through a different approach to that. And the concept right now would be actually the vacation of the roads, having the developer control them all privately, but through a public access agreement and or license agreement to ensure that the public has access in perpetuity to them. And what private ownership allows is a higher level of control, commitment to maintenance, commitment to safety that maybe we can do, but one
Okay.
where we could still guarantee access to the public too.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so. Would that be outlined in the development agreement? And something I'd be looking for is the terms of that agreement. So maybe after 10 years, it doesn't expire. And then if there's a new management company, they decide not to have public access anymore.
It would kind of get goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, it's something Jason and I've talked about at length and
Sure.
a lot, and it
Yeah.
would be a fundamental principle by which we would move forward to, I think, ensure and guarantee in perpetuity that the public has the rights to access things and enjoy them. That's what we're signing up for. That's what a participation agreement would be based on.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm really glad to hear you brought it up. I expected that you would.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. I'm doing my homework here. And then I didn't see, you mentioned it, Peter, but I didn't see in the plan or in the renderings, lighting along the Greenway Trail. I'm guessing you're going to put a lot of thought into lighting. Maybe you could just articulate what that would look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it's still being contemplated. We didn't want to show anything and not be, have it fully baked, but 100% in terms of just foot candles and safety and as being utmost importance. But we also think it can be a fantastic kind of identifier of just clearly what the path is and kind of leading people and almost wayfinding in a way of how we use the lighting. But yeah, we did not include it because it just has not been finalized. Simple
Okay.
as that. But absolutely, we're thinking about it in a big way. Yeah.
Okay.
In full disclosure, we have work to do outside the site proper. The Parley's Trail, as soon as you get off their property, wouldn't be their responsibility.
Yeah.
Jason's been pushing me to come to agreements with the county and other entities on how we handle that. We're not in a position to force the county nor commit to that right now. But
Yeah.
there are definitely things we're talking about. And I think to the point we heard earlier, the tax dollars that would be generated peripheral to this, there going to be things we're going to have to be conscious of what we want to do with them and how we prioritize them.
Yeah. Okay. And then with the different residential buildings on the site, would they all be managed with under the same management company? Okay. Okay. And then do you guys manage it or do you outsource it to a partner of yours? Okay. And then I saw, sorry, gang.
It's okay.
Okay. I saw, you mentioned something, Peter, about parking. I saw on the site, there's quite a bit of parking, like surface level parking, but that there would be parking also specific to those buildings for the tenants. Is that right? And then do you envision that parking on your site, that surface level, that would be for people that are living there or people that are visiting there? How do you envision that to be used?
Yeah, so we've accommodated for both. We have a series of parking stalls that are going to be resident serving only. And then we have a series, I think we're just north of 50 parking stalls that are 100% just for public use as they would come and enjoy the property.
Okay.
And we've continued to try to balance how much structured parking we're forcing them to build versus how much surface parking, recognizing the scale and size of the site at 20+ acres, artificially forcing them to structure parking versus taking the city's participation, putting it into the public spaces, putting it into the Parley's Trail, widening those. We've listed much more so to creating place, creating space, knowing that at a 20-acre site and the pace by which a project of the scale could be absorbed, forcing them to put that parking up front in an area with the existing infrastructure, in particular the highway, would likely prohibit, and I'm sure Jason would say would stop them from coming out of the ground. So it's been a delicate balance, and we're going to continue to evolve that conversation as we work through the participation into the agreement. But it's one that we've been very, very conscious of, and it's been probably the catalyst for the evolution of the project all along. We've been very intentional and very thoughtful about that balance. I did notice that they did bring up a parking ratio for the entire project, I think at the 900 unit mark, which is about 0.75 units per acre, or 0.75 units per stall per unit. Thanks, Peter. And when I met Jason, he was like at 1.3. We have to build 1.3 or 1.2 or this thing can't pencil. And to watch the evolution with his design team and how he sees the world, at the end of the day, he's not going to build something that can't finance and won't work for him to rent, to lease up. And so the conversation continues to evolve, and you've seen that in our other projects that we're bringing to you now, that parking conversation evolves. The one really neat thing about the opportunity with the second phase 15 years from now, and even the last piece of the 900 units, is he's got versions where it's surface parked or where it's wrapped, and where that market can dictate how much parking we ultimately build and what kind of parking. Makes sense?
Yeah. This is my last question.
Do you have a question? We're good.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we hope that the last phase is not even 15 years off and it's sooner than that, but we do have existing leases and existing tenants, but the vision is that this really becomes a catalyst and it really, we can move as fast as possible on getting the future buildings, and over time the density then continues to increase over time is the way that this is ultimately planned. I also wanted to just even respond to something that you said earlier about the trail. I mean, our hope is that this is a major investment in the trail system. We think is a very important piece of South Salt Lake and of the region, and this is where the green space can be. But also this will then stimulate, I mean, it's the basics, just even basic things just outside of this site, but as kind of a precedent for the rest of the area. So this is this incredible place of a trail, but also the green space, and that it will evolve to other places nearby as well, is our hope, so that we end up with an even more special trail.
Great. We just have two more, Nick and Ray.
Yeah. Am I okay? Sorry, I feel like I'm monopolizing the whole time. Are you guys okay going a little over 7? Okay. A two-part question. One, Jonathan, remind me, the HTRZ zone, I know there's an affordability requirement, so there would have to be a certain ratio of units that are fit. Could you just remind us what that is? And then the other part of the question is, are all of these units for rent, or would there be a mixture of for sale for rent?
They're for rent, and it's 12.5%.
12.5% of the units have to be afforded. Is that 80%?
It's 80%. And Jason and I have had talks about how to do that and different approaches to it throughout the process. So
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Nick?
I just have one question. It's like, what do you want from us? Like, do you want, like, do you just want to share the vision, or do you actually need something for us to vote on?
Well, not tonight, I don't think.
This
but-
is just a work session presentation for you to understand the project overview. We will be bringing back to you in bites, parts of the entitlement process for like a new zone. And then ultimately a financial participation process, which they've asked for. And we're refining that in lieu of or and tied to the license agreement and public access and other public improvements.
So the big thing is gonna be the.
Yeah, there's gonna be a
financial-
financial ask and it's, we've shared those numbers with the chair and the co-chair and with the mayor and the concept is, I think, close enough where we felt confident and ready to bring the project to you so you could see it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A very cool project. Appreciate the presentation. And now we'll get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion by Charlotte, a second by Clarissa. All in favor?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned.